Greetings and welcome to Cybersecurity Today. I'm your host, Jim Wiggins. If this is your first time tuning into our program, allow me a few moments to introduce what we're all about. So what exactly is Cybersecurity Today? Well, it's a show designed to explore the realm of computer security in an exciting and thoughtful way. Cybersecurity Today is a half-hour news broadcast utilizing a talk show format to break down the themes, topics, and current events in the cybersecurity industry. Our mission with this program is to dispel the murkiness and complexity that's often associated with the cybersecurity sector. For our viewers who are already active professionals in the field, this show will deliver a pulse on the current state of affairs. We feature a variety of esteemed guests to delve into topics that are important to those in the cybersecurity space. Our objective is to offer information to a diverse audience, from beginners all the way to experts and everyone in between. You're sure to gain fresh insight from today's show. All right, let's set the stage and discuss the structure of the show. This will help you understand what's in store. Today's show is divided into two parts. Our first segment, known as Cyber Bites, covers several current events unfolding today in the cybersecurity sector. Some of these stories might be familiar, while others may be entirely new to you. Then, in our second segment, we're joined by Mr. Christopher Crowley, an independent consultant and respected expert in cybersecurity operations. He'll share his perspectives on what's working and what's not in today's cybersecurity programs, drawing on years of hands-on experience to explore operational challenges, success factors, and strategies for building more resilient security teams and operations. Okay, let's get into the Cyber Bytes segment and talk about what's going on today in the cybersecurity industry. In current news, the Chilean ransomware group led global ransomware activity in April 2025, claiming 72 data leak disclosures. This marks a significant increase in their operations, surpassing other groups like Akira and Play. Chilean, also known as Agenda, has been active since 2022 and continues to evolve its tactics. The surge in activity emphasizes the persistent threat posed by ransomware groups to organizations worldwide. In other news, Coinbase disclosed a significant data breach where cybercriminals bribed overseas customer support staff to access sensitive customer data, including names, addresses, and partial social security numbers. The attackers demanded a $20 million ransom, which Coinbase refused, opting instead to offer a $20 million reward for information leading to their capture. The breach affected less than 1% of users, but could cost the company up to $400 million in remediation and legal expenses. This incident underscores the vulnerabilities in third-party vendor relationships and the importance of stringent access controls. In other news, luxury fashion brand Dior reported a cyber attack that compromised customer data, including names, contact information, and purchase histories. The breach was discovered on May 7th and affected customers in South Korea and China. While financial data remained secure, the incident highlights the risks retailers face in protecting customer information. Dior has engaged cybersecurity experts and notified relevant authorities to address the breach. Those are some of the top headlines shaping the cybersecurity landscape today. We're taking a quick break, but when we return, Mr. Christopher Crowley will join us to examine the current state of cybersecurity operations.
You can't buy a best friend. You can love them, pet them, care for them, whether they want you to or not. You can take a picture, you can jump, yell, you can fly to the moon, travel the world, or just stay in bed. You can't buy a best friend like that, but you can adopt one. 'Cause we're connected.
Welcome back to Cybersecurity Today. In our next segment, we're honored to host Mr. Christopher Crowley, an independent cybersecurity consultant and one of the field's most respected voices in security operations. As the founder of Montance LLC, Christopher has spent over a decade advising organizations on incident handling, security architecture, and operational maturity. He also serves as a senior instructor with the SANS Institute and is well known for his contributions to cybersecurity education and workforce development. With deep experience across federal, commercial, and academic environments, Christopher brings a unique perspective on what's working and what isn't in today's Security Operations Center. Today, he joins us to explore the realities of modern cybersecurity operations, assess current challenges, and offer strategies for building resilient and effective security program. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you here. I thought maybe what we could do, our viewership is kind of diverse. It's a lot of people that don't know a whole lot about cybersecurity. And I thought maybe what we could do is kind of level set and start from the beginning and maybe ask if you could spend a couple of minutes to talk about like, what is a security operations center and how has its core mission evolved over maybe the last 10 or so years? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, fair enough. I have a lot of thoughts, and I'll try to keep it really brief because I've been looking at it for a while. So the mission of the Cybersecurity Operations Center is to be able to do monitoring, response, threat intelligence, to have some sort of a business alignment capacity, to get into a little bit of forensic analysis if it's necessary, and then also monitor the posture of the information systems that an organization has and try to consistently improve their posture and cybersecurity resilience so that when bad things start to happen, we can quickly recover from it.
Understood. So how does the adversaries that are out there, the attack techniques that are used, how does that influence how these security operations centers get structured and how they ultimately get operated?
Well, look, so I've been looking at cybersecurity stuff for decades, really. And I've been focused on cybersecurity operations for the last 10 years primarily. But 2001, 2002 were the first intrusions that I had to deal with. And back then, I mean, this was pre-Microsoft Patch Tuesday kind of stuff. Information systems were terribly weak. And what's happened over the last 20, 25 years is that the information systems have actually become substantially more resilient, substantially better engineered, better security architecture. But because there's so much of a potential for profit, adversaries have actually also substantially increased their capacity. So this is something where the changes in the landscape, on the one hand, attackers are getting better, but on the other hand, we are too. And I do feel like there hasn't been a lot in terms of the net advantage of the attackers. But I think that we still have a ton of work to do in order to call the cyber game over, right? We haven't fixed a lot of things, and I'll say why I think that in probably in a bit.
Got it. So I know that you author or you work on like a report or a survey as it relates to security operations centers. I was wondering maybe if you could share some of the surprises or significant findings that you might have uncovered or you might have articulated in this year's SOC survey.
Happy to. So the SOC survey is something that this is the 9th year that I've written it. I've been collecting information and responses for quite a while. So for me, there isn't much that's actually surprising in it, but I think if people looked at it and read it, there are a couple of things that they probably would think are interesting at the very least. And the first one is the artificial intelligence machine learning. Lots of people are using it, but they're largely dissatisfied with it. Right? So that's an interesting thing, that people are using it, but they don't like it in terms of the technology. Another thing that's actually on the positive side, and I think that's something that's of course we should highlight consistently, is people in cybersecurity operations are actually staying longer in their jobs, and they generally are satisfied with some other technologies, notably endpoint detection and response.
Understood. So you brought up artificial intelligence. I wanted to ask about it because we have, it's the only thing anybody ever talks about anymore, it seems like, in our industry, or at least everywhere. In the context of SOCs operations, Does it actually add value? In other words, is it helping analysts out there, or is it really mostly marketing hype?
So first of all, I think that there's a ton of marketing hype around AI and ML. I really do. But I also think that the technology is phenomenal. I love it. I use it. Everybody in cybersecurity operations is using it, and it's true. Even though they're dissatisfied with the technical capacity, they're still using it because it has such substantial promise. So let me sort of frame a concept that I have around this. The SOC, part of its responsibility in the past, henceforth and evermore, is to integrate new technology and provide security architecture guidance for new technology. And AI is no different. So that's the first thing that I want to highlight about it, is that this is just part of what a SOC actually does for the long term. That being said, the real problem right now is that people think that generative GPTs, the chat GPT is the best example, but whether it's Claude or Gemini or any of them, we're all using them, but the consistency and reliability of them is inadequate for a lot of the purposes in the SOC right now.
So are there places where you see potential promise for it to eventually evolve into the SOC space?
Yep. One thing that actually in the survey specifically that's being expressed that there is satisfaction greater than a couple of other attributes of ML tools is actually in detection engineering. And so I don't want to go too deep into this because I don't want to lose people who are non-technical, but essentially machine learning is a capacity that's based on predictive mathematical expression based on training. So that's all I'm going to say about the technical stuff. But what that means for us is that if we do a pretty good job at training our tools and we understand how that machine learning can detect something that might be anomalous, then we can actually set up really useful detections so that we get an alert that says, hey, analyst, you should probably look at it. So in the survey, they're reporting that they like some of the detection capacity, but what they don't like are the orchestration and automation tools associated with AI and ML. And what they also don't like in terms of use within cybersecurity is the generative, the GPT stuff. And let me also add to that and say, I think the real promise for the GPT right now is sort of like putting the polish on the messaging that people inside of cybersecurity want to send. Most cyber technical staff are somewhat deficient in terms of practice on communication and articulation of important things to the business. So if they can make sense of what they want to say and then have the GPT help them to put that into a business context, I think there's tremendous profit for that sort of thing.
Got it. Got it. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Another area that obviously SOCs tend to focus on is incident response, because bad stuff happens. Yep. I'm wondering if you've seen specific gaps that have occurred or mistakes that are pretty commonly found within SOC operations today. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So the first thing is I actually have spent a substantial portion of my career doing incident handling. I started off with incidents that were in the early aughts where we didn't know what security was, but our systems were getting compromised, and the FBI showed up and said, "Hey, you need to take these systems offline because they're thoroughly compromised, and we've collected our information out of it. Now you clean up the mess." That's been going on for decades now, and a lot of organizations are still pretending that it's not going to happen to them. And that's the first thing.
So
people aren't ready for it.
So
that's the first thing in response.
But is it lack of awareness, or is it lack of preparation? I mean, what's contributing to that?
Yep. So some of it still might be lack of awareness, and a lot of it is just lack of preparation because other things are more important for a business. If you have an IT system that you don't really have a lot of knowledge in the integral sort of details of how it works, and then you're tasked with preparing for some like sort of unknown circumstance where that gets out of your control, that's a pretty hard task to tell somebody that they need to prepare for. They don't really have the imagination for it. And then when it really does happen, they end up in a circumstance where now they're losing their mind because they don't know how to deal with it.
So are there kind of best practices? Are there lessons learned? How can SOCs better prepare for these kind of high stress incidents that undoubtedly are going to occur? How do you guide your clients in that respect?
Yeah, so first of all, I think that there are preparation things that could be done. As one example, I call this pre-forensics, and it's a term that's used in cyber. The idea of whatever you would do if there was an incident, you're running that consistently anyway. Whatever sort of collection that you would do in incident response, and this is host-based sort of review of the assets that are present. So this is just kind of like an ongoing, regular performance of responsive actions before it's an emergency. So that's a best practice. And pre-forensics is a nice sort of tactical approach to that, where I give somebody a task. Go to this host, do one per week, and do a collection like it was compromised. Also, that becomes useful information for hunting in order to see if things are problematic. I have a couple other ones if you don't mind me going on to talk about some of those.
Sure,
yeah,
please.
So the idea of also looking at your cyber insurance. Most organizations actually have an insurance policy, and that insurance policy will then have an inclusion of cyber incident response. And if you understand how to leverage that and engage that third party via your cyber insurance, you're already ahead of the game, because you're thinking about the fact that at some point my internal incident response capacity is just, we can't handle it anymore, and we need to integrate to a third party. So if you start to talk to these third parties, who your cyber insurance will probably help you to pay for if it's an intrusion, then you're in a position to be able to segue to gaining third-party external expertise if you ever get to an incident that's high enough severity that you need to do that. Okay.
Understood.
So these are a couple of things that I think really make a lot of sense for organizations to think about that they're not already doing.
So, as you're explaining all of these kind of things that organizations should be doing, I'm thinking about the impact that SOCs have on the workforce in terms of burnout, satisfaction. I assume being a SOC analyst is kind of like being an IT professional. You don't get a lot of love, you just get a lot of the problems. What does your research tell you about burnout and job satisfaction among these kind of individuals that work in these kind of environments?
Yeah, it's interesting. It is extremely high stress. And usually people in these spaces, the security operations, they're good at just sort of like tamping that down and dealing with it, because things always feel urgent. And they individually are usually not good at seeking the sort of personal relief that they need in order to be able to continue to have this very stressful job for the long term. And that's actually something that showed up in the survey. There was an expression in the survey that there was a sentiment, I guess I should say, that there was a lot of sense of no management support. Nonetheless, the duration of employment, 3 to 5 years, with a number of people saying 10 years, 3 to 5 years was the highest grouping of how long people tend to last in the SOC, which on average is pretty good in the comparison to IT. And in addition to that, it's an improvement from the past. I've been tracking this for the 9th year now. It used to be 1 to 3 years, and over the last several years, it has actually moved into the 3 to 5 year space. One other thing I want to say about that I think anybody who is managing a team, managing security operations, or partially associated with that, the things that people said were most important for them for retention: meaningful work, money, and career advancement. And that was the order in terms of popularity this year, but those 3 are always the top of the lists. And it's money is good, but the last couple of years it hasn't been at the top. And it's more about that sense of fulfillment, career advancement, and doing something meaningful to help with the organization. So if you are in management and you are dealing with staff who are working these stressful jobs, the idea of just doing something to show them that you care and value them, that may make the difference for a number of employees.
That's interesting. That was going to be my next question, so you already read my mind and answered it, so thank you.
I'm happy to elaborate on it, though, further if you want. I have a couple of ideas and things that I've seen that actually work in terms of the management finding good integration into the security operations to help to convey that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to just ask, like, if you're a leader, for example, that wanted to try to improve retention, what would you do to kind of motivate the teams? I don't know if you can address that. You kind of alluded to it in your answer, but if you have some additional thoughts, that'd be awesome.
I have a bunch of ideas on that. The first one is literally ask the question: what do you care about that makes you want to stay in the organization? Ask that question and listen to what they say. It's a very simple thing. Because there are plenty of SOCs that I've interacted with people who work in SOCs, where not only would the management never ask that question, the management wouldn't really even think to ask that question. It's a big differentiator, and it's an obvious one to me. There's another thing that I would suggest, and this is hard to do. So take this as a stretch goal, long term, you get to the point where you can actually do this. Somebody in management showing up and being prepared to work one shift in the SOC. I mean, and let me also flip that back to the SOC, that the SOC would be in a position to take somebody who's obviously trusted within the organization and actually get them prepared to be able to onboard for one shift and do something useful. Like that's also a deficiency that the SOC has. So I'm trying to give both parties here a task to have some skin in the game of being able to do that. Because if I just say, take the SOC manager and have them work a shift, that's not really fair because they're not trained to do that. That's not what they look at every day. But if the SOC staff have to get it to where a reasonable person who understands some of the important things can look at the instructions, follow the guidance, do the work. They've also then obviously put some thought into the onboarding. That sort of both sides of the party, I think that really starts to galvanize that concept of like, why are we here? What are we doing? Why do we care? Which leads back to the concept of meaningful work. Understood.
Appreciate that. That's very, very interesting, very helpful. I did want to talk a little bit about metrics, right? Because you got a data center, you got a security operations center. So you obviously been in this environment for a while. What kind of metrics do you think actually reflect good performance and effectiveness of a SOC? How do you, when you're grading or when you're measuring SOC, performance and capability, how would you go about kind of stringing together a set of measurements?
Yeah, there's a whole set of mean time to whatever. They're out there, they're good, they're useful. Veris, which is what Verizon Data Breach uses as their basis for assessment. There are a whole bunch of metrics you can derive from Veris. Those are all great. They're sort of one-dimensional, I'll say, measurements, and I think that they're useful. I have a couple of things that I actually think, if you're measuring these things, and they're a little bit complicated to measure, but if you're measuring them, you're really looking to see if things are working well. So let me explain them. There are three, and it might take a little bit for me to unpack each one. The first one is the percent of well-managed systems. And what I mean by well-managed systems is essentially, who owns the asset and what importance it has for the organization. The second part to the well-managed system is that you actually have all of your technology deployed onto it, including baseline, configuration, EDR, XDR, whatever you need. And the third part of it is that the security operations is able to say that there is a tracing of the detections that should be in place for an asset of that type. So that's the first one. If you can measure that, you're doing pretty well. Do you want me to go on to other words?
Sure. If you want to just quickly highlight the other two, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. The second one is the concept of impact quantification. If you have some way to quantify how bad damage was when it occurs. Okay. And then the third one is incident avoidability. And I have sort of three buckets that I put this in. Incident avoidability. The first bucket is there was something we could have done, we should have done, but we didn't do, and we're not really sure why we didn't do it, but that's what enabled us to be damaged. That's bucket one. It's avoidable. It was completely avoidable. I don't care what labels we use, but a two is you have something you could have done, but you chose not to because of a good reason, maybe some sort of risk decision, some sort of financial reason. The organization chose don't do that because X reason, but then we had a problem as a result of that. That's a impact avoidable of two. The third is like the 0-day world. Okay. The third is the concept of like, everything was configured like we were following the best practices, everything was patched and up to date, and yet they still got through, which quite honestly does in fact happen. That's on the table. That happens. But if you're actually looking at all of the problems that you have and you're able to actually trace root cause to be able to put each one into one of those three things, that means that you're really doing a great job across a whole facet of different things within cybersecurity operations.
All right, Chris, so my last question for you is, what do you see as the top trends or technologies that SOCs have to prepare for over the next 5 years?
5 years is really hard to think about in terms of technology change. 3 years ago, no one was really talking about AI, ML in terms of the popular aspects. So I think that we should focus on getting your management to provide you with a long-term stable trajectory. That's the onus is on the SOC to be able to ask them the right questions to do that. But I do absolutely think that in the next 5 years, we can actually do a lot more orchestration, automation, and business alignment much more effectively. And I think that that's the path to success going forward.
Okay, so that was a nice short answer. Thank you. So I'll follow one more question for you. How can viewers of the show learn more about you if they want to reach out to you or communicate with you?
Easiest way is if you look at my website, it's montance.com. That's montance.com. And there's a bunch of information there about what I do. I am a very small niche player in this world. Nonetheless, I actually have broad reach and have affected a number of organizations very positively. So if people are interested, they can look there. There are actually about 50 or 60 different presentations that I've done and 100 documents that I share that you can go get more information if you want things along what I'm talking about.
Awesome, awesome. Chris, we're out of time. Thanks for joining us today and sharing your expert insight on cybersecurity operations. Your perspective on incident response, SOC maturity, and what's truly working in today's security environment has provided tremendous value to our viewers. So that's going to wrap up today's episode. We extend our sincere thanks to Mr. Christopher Crowley for sharing his valuable insights on the current state of cybersecurity operations. His perspectives on incident response, SOC effectiveness, and operational challenges offered a practical and thought-provoking look at what's working and what might not be working in the field today. For more information about Cybersecurity Today and future episodes, please visit our show's website at www.cybersecuritytoday.org. Additionally, you can scan the QR code that's displayed at the bottom of your screen for quick and easy access to our show's website. Finally, we welcome your questions or comments via email at contact@cybersecuritytoday.org. Feel free to reach out to us. We're here to assist and engage with you. That does it for today. Thanks a lot for joining us. We look forward to seeing you at our next broadcast. Stay safe, stay informed. Have a great day.